So do you know, should I like, do you know about me? Do you know my stuff?
I don't know your personal story other than, your stuff on a loan. Yeah, but I mean, I know you're pastoring and that's kind of what I wanted to get into and kind of your personal life and obviously would hit a loan, but, I'd love to kinda unpack anything you wanna unpack. And I would just say the more vulnerable you wanna be, the better for the guys.
Yeah. So remember, uh, 2020, big year,
Yeah.
big year for everybody. So we're, everyone's cooped up and, my wife and I kind of have this conversation of like, okay, how much money do we have? Like, how long can we make it, like, not working? And then at some point, we're all cooped up and it's very stressful. And my son, who's our oldest child, he's about 5, and we notice that he starts um, standing progressively closer to the TV as we're at home watching movies and just trying to pass the time. And so we think, okay, this kiddo, either he likes doing that or he needs glasses. And so we figured he probably needs glasses. So we got him into a walk-in clinic and said, hey, we'd like some glasses for this kid so he can see. And they said, I think you need more than glasses. And so they referred us to a specialist and then another specialist. And then we drove way out to Iowa um, to see a specialist there. And they had told us it was a really weird situation at the doctor's office because we walk in and we feel like everyone is like they know something we don't know.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're going from kind of station to station and doing testing and hearing about because they said there's a lot of things it could be, um, but we kind of have the feeling in hindsight that they knew what the news was, but they wanted to confirm with genetic testing first, and so they did some genetic testing, and we got a call a couple weeks later that my son was diagnosed with CLN3 Batten disease is what it's called. So there's a lot of different kinds of Batten disease. CLN3 is one of the most common, but it's really rare. But basically, it's like childhood dementia. So it starts about age 5, and your brain doesn't work right. And what happens is, first kids lose their vision, and they start to lose some of their mobility. They start to have seizures, and eventually they will succumb to the disease. Life expectancy at its earliest is like 18, 19, and then we see some kids live up to 30 sometimes. But that's a fairly intense thing to hear. I think I was 28 at the time of the diagnosis. Super young family, and then um, and we had 2 other kids at the time, and we have our 2 daughters. Um, and so one of the struggles with all this is we wanted to get them tested as soon as possible. And that was sort of a battle back and forth. The doctors don't want to test your kids.
Mm.
Um, and they rightly think that it'll cause you to spin out of control and just be
Mm.
really, really in a terrible emotional state, which of course it is. Of course it's going to. But we wanted to know what was going on with our kids. We didn't want that to be haunting us, and we didn't want it to be a mystery. And so, after about a year and a half of just kind of going back, we finally found a doctor who would test the kids, and we got them tested. And my daughters both tested positive for um, about 6 months apart. And so, yeah, so that was extremely rough. And I think one of the strange blessings about all these kids getting diagnosed is that I forget the day and time that it happened, but it was somewhere around, like for my son, it was Memorial Day. And then I remember that Father's Day afterwards being crazy hard because it takes everything that I thought fatherhood would be for me, and it turns it upside down. So it's every expectation I had about the next forever years of my life raising a child is completely turned upside down. And then that happened 3 times. So my oldest daughter got diagnosed right before Thanksgiving. I think it was the week before Thanksgiving.
Mm.
Um, and then my youngest daughter, I think it was right before Easter, she got diagnosed. So it was all kind of on holidays. Um, so that kind of marks the most obscure thing about me. And now, Jared, you know
Man,
my so
dude, you just my heart is ripped out. I feel yeah, I just feel like I don't know what the I'm trying to process what my emotions are feeling. I feel like my heart just got ripped out and almost in shock hearing that. I can't like secondhand shock. Like I can't fathom emotionally hearing that news and where you're at mentally. So this was all in 2020. So
yeah.
5 years ago. How old are your kids now?
So now they are 10. Uh, daughter just turned 8, and then we got my 4-year-old will turn 5 pretty soon.
And are you seeing the symptoms in the daughters like you saw in your son?
Yeah, so my son is basically he's lost pretty much all his vision. We call his left eye his good eye. He can see like a little tiny shred of something out of that eye. But then my oldest daughter is at a point where she gets she gets angry a little bit more often because she's struggling to see things. She's struggling to navigate um, in the world that she kind of once knew. And so everything from uh, finding the toy that she just sat down to, knowing what food is on the table is now kind of a new mystery to her, and it's very frustrating. But I think when I'm telling people about my personal journey of when we got this diagnosis to now, I always have to start off in like the 6 or 7 weeks right after, like right in the intensity of finding out and knowing that we had this looming, um, these other 2 kids who hadn't been diagnosed. It was so emotionally intense that's the only time in my life where I had felt a total loss of meaning and purpose,
Mm.
and a little bit of loss of, well, a total loss of self-worth and direction. And it was like I was just a totally empty man
Mm.
um, inside. I remember we went to my grandpa, he was literally on his deathbed. He was in his 90s, and it was like we had this healthy man a couple of years ago, but all the life was kind of drained out of him. He was skinny and he was sunken in. And I remember thinking like, this man is how I feel on the inside
Mm.
as I was seeing him. And that went on for a long time. It stretched through. So it happened right after Memorial Day. And I remember I was in this state of just confusion and uh, depression just for weeks. Um, and that hasn't 100% left me. But I remember I would look at my son as we were walking around our property. We had like a garden we would go out and tend to. And I would just, as I was looking at him, it was like I would see a clock on him that was just counting down time, and then the time was getting shorter and shorter. And it was like, I wanted to spend so much time with him. And then every time I spent time with him, it was a reminder that my time with him was limited. Um, and so it was just a crushing uh, time for me personally. And that crushing, um, it's weird because I want to call it depression, or anxiety, but it was really just like an internal torment of like, I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm terrified. I don't want to do it necessarily. Um, and it was just a rock bottom feeling. Um, so like, I know you've experienced that. And I know tons of men who are listening have probably experienced the rock bottom feeling where you're like, I have nowhere else to go. Um, and the time that I really have found that I treasure is I think I made it 7 weeks of just rock bottom, um, wanting to wanting to flip a switch and get a new life. Um, and my wife actually pointed me towards, and we grieve in totally different ways. Like
Mm,
my wife and I are totally different people when it comes to that. But she sent me a sermon to listen to. Um, and it was actually, it was an Easter sermon by Tim Keller that he had preached a few years before that. And I remember listening to it, and it's funny because she didn't want me to not listen to it because she knew if she just gave me a link and said, "Hey, give this a listen," I wouldn't
mm,
listen to it.
yeah.
And so she actually, uh, we were in the car together, and she played it, so she knew I was captive and I couldn't go anywhere. Um, and through listening to that sermon, he preached in the end of Luke when Jesus comes back on Easter morning, when he sits down and eats fish with his disciples. And what that sermon was to me was a reminder of what I had forgotten during that time.
Mm,
And it was a reminder of not that I had forgotten the gospel, but that I hadn't lived in light of the truth of the gospel for so long. And I hadn't, um, I think because I never experienced anything like that, I was never forced to live with a mindset that's totally focused on eternity.
yeah.
Like I was never I would believe that, of course. I would articulate my beliefs in the gospel and that Jesus is gonna restore the world, and that comes to save sinners like me. And I could articulate all of those things, but 7 weeks after my son's diagnosis is when the gospel became more real than it had ever been
Mm,
before, because I knew that because of the cross, um, like Jesus had conquered this thing that I was feeling.
mm,
Like Jesus had conquered uh, Batten disease, this disease that entered my life without me asking for it, and had just what I felt like blown everything up. Well, Jesus conquered that, and I'm going to live a life that's totally free from that someday, and that's going to extend into eternity. And knowing that truth and being able to live with that truth has been the most hopeful, um, joyful, fulfilling thing that I've ever um, experienced in my life. And so it is a constant struggle.
yeah.
Like it's a it's a constant thing. I don't have any story of, I snapped my fingers and there was healing.
Yeah.
But God has just been so kind to me and to my family and to my kids through this whole process, um, and just been with us in this journey in ways that I just like I couldn't have even imagined beforehand.
Sam, I'm really, really grateful, man, for your willingness to share that story with us and let us into that part of your life, bro. Like, uh, I just truly can't imagine anything heavier. There is nothing heavier in my mind, and for your ability to point us back to the gospel, like it reminds me of like it doesn't make sense to the rest of the world. This is why Peter and Paul say like you're just aliens, you're foreigners here because this just doesn't make sense. If this is home, then what you just described should be the most crushing thing, debilitating. You should be in a dark room under blankets right now. And the fact that when I popped onto this call, you have a smile on your face and you're like somehow finding joy is the only thing that can give testament to that is the gospel. That there is a savior, as you said, Jesus, who will come and redeem in the most broken parts of our life and the messiest parts of what we're experiencing in a broken world. And I'm just really like I just feel really honored, man, to talk to you and to hear you articulate the gospel. It just means so much more. to me, in the middle of your suffering, you know?
Thanks. And it's such a gift to be able to share that even, um, and just to be able to look at the situation not as, a deep, dark hole, but as getting confronted with disease and death, but being able to look at that disease and death and seeing its arms tied,
Yeah.
seeing death totally hogtied and worthless in the face of Christ. Um,
Man, what a beautiful image. I feel, I almost feel like this question is too shallow or just like cheap. So forgive me if it like,
no, I would
yeah.
prefer that actually. What do you got?
Well, I just forgive me if this feels like, but I can't help but think that all this happened right after your time on Alone and you spent 60 days. And again, this question, it might feel like, dude, don't try to make this connection. And that's, but there is
That's good.
there is
Good.
a sense of like the wilderness, like Jesus in the wilderness before starting his ministry publicly. And it's like, obviously it's a reality show, but in the 60 days you were alone. Do you feel like all the stuff that nobody would ever see on camera or on a reality show, do you feel like the Lord was at all preparing you mentally, spiritually, emotionally to come into what would be the hardest reality that you'll experience likely in your life? Like, is there any connection there, or is that just
You know,
yeah.
that's actually a really, really good question um, because the answer really is no.
Mm, mm,
And which is unexpected.
yeah,
And I think I could say yes to some extent. Like there's definitely something going on there where um I had a extended period of time where I had to just be really tough and I had to just stick it out and suffer through something. But it didn't like nothing from Alone prepared me for the suffering that came after Alone.
yeah,
I
and
I
that's
would
what I
even argue
imagine,
for,
yeah. That's why it felt like a
but
cheap question.
well, but it's still true though that um I think one bit of encouragement, if you could call it that, is I honestly think that it's harder to just be a dad and love your family and lead well for years than it is to go on alone and suffer for a couple of months.
Mm,
Because when you're on alone, you're totally um uh, it was never lost on me that I was choosing to do that.
yeah,
It was totally under my control. And sure, like it was miserable sometimes, but it was a choice. I was trying to have an adventure and earn some money for my family, and it's still it's not as cool of a job as church planting, but it's also a lot easier than church planting.
yeah.
It's to starve in the wilderness. But the thing that the Lord used it for though was for building bridges between myself and my family and other people who we would interact with.
Mm,
And so, like, I'll tell you this, in getting involved in church planting, you have to be relational really fast with people,
yeah,
and to walk into a room of people who might be skeptical, and then one of them recognizes you from TV is just the most bizarre way of, like, engaging with the room, but it's been such a gift that the Lord has provided um to have that instant relational connection. But I'll go a step further. Um, so we try to at least, and we haven't missed one yet since we started, but we try to actually go to a conference every year that is it's about Batten disease, and it's a
mm,
conference designed for families to come to.
mm,
So like we'll be at the next one next year in Chicago, but it's all these families from around the country who come and they're going through very similar things what we're going through. And sometimes the Batten disease are worse than what we're suffering through, or maybe acutely harder. But through that experience on the show, we're able to make um, we're able to make connections with people that we wouldn't be able to make before. So a
yeah,
family will come in who's really hurting and maybe they got diagnosed a month before and they just decided to come. Um, and then they recognize me from the show, and instantly we have something to talk about that is not this disease that's happening, this
mm,
horrible experience that they want nothing to do with.
yeah,
And we have another way to connect there. and that allows me just to comfort them and to give them a familiar face. My face is familiar to them,
Mm.
even if their face isn't familiar to mine. Um, and we're instantly able to just connect and love them right off the bat. They let their walls down a lot faster, and so I can't even articulate that blessing.
Yeah. I just want to pause and say, like, because we have listeners all over the country and world, and if you are a listener right now and you're in Nebraska, you need to go to Sam's church. If you, so, it sounds like you're planting a church. I want you to tell us more, but I want to sit under the leadership of men who are suffering and still finding Jesus in the midst of it. Like there is just uh, uh, our pastor at home. I'm like I sit under the leadership of our pastor, who many of our Dad Tired listeners know. His name's Caleb, and the dude has just felt some, he's gone through some stuff in life. And every week when he's preaching, it's not an intellectual exercise. It is a I have wrestled with the Lord in the darkest places, and I have to find the hope of Jesus in the midst of it. And that's the kind of leadership I want to sit under. And so I'm just saying, like you and I just met today, but I'm like, I'm confident in telling all of our listeners, if you live in Nebraska or within a 6 hour drive, you need to show up on Sundays and come to Sam's church and just sit under the leadership of a man who's like wrestling with the Lord in really deep ways.
Yeah. That'd be a wicked commute, but I'm for it, you know?
Where is it for the I mean, like, we'll just pause here for a second and, like,
Sure.
yeah, quick, like, drop the name of the church, website, and all that stuff because I know guys are gonna wanna know.
Yeah, so I feel really called to, like, regionally Southeast Nebraska, and we're planting a church right now, in a little town called Hickman, so I give a lot of my time and energy to rural ministry. Hickman's like a bedroom community to, Lincoln, but we planted a couple of years ago, and, yeah, it's been a blessing just to see people have a Christ-centered community of neighbors that they've never
Mm.
experienced before, for people to come to faith in Christ. We're having a baptism service on Sunday.
Ah, cool.
So yeah, it's been an amazing blessing to plant a church, uh,
Yeah.
to wake up and have that privilege. Um, yeah, it's amazing.
Well, I'll have you put the like, the website, if you guys got a website or social media or something, we'll put that in the show notes so guys who are in that area can check it out.
Yeah, it's Redemption Hill Bible Church.
Okay, Redemption Hill Bible Church. Did you purposely put the name Redemption in there?
No.
Oh, cool. I just
No.
your season of Alone was a redemption. I'm like,
It was, it
was
was.
this is this a
It's
continuation?
it's funny because I have people who ask me that. A lot of people ask me that actually. I'm pretty sure some of our members are convinced that was purposeful.
Just want to
But
keep that reality show going as long as possible.
yeah, oh yeah. Well, you gotta, how long do you have to be out of the reality TV world before you're washed up? Is it 6 months? Is it six
No, dude.
years?
Well, the thing is, you just had a resurgence because I actually didn't watch it until literally 2 nights ago. I finished. I'll be fully transparent. My wife was super into it. I haven't been as into it, so I've been working and stuff, and she just like laying on the bed, falling asleep watching it. And I actually came in at that last episode of Redemption season. And so I just laid in bed with her and we watched it. And she was rooting for you. I'm like, who do you want to win? She's like, I want this guy Sam to win. And so I watched this whole last episode and I'm watching you win. And as I'm watching you, I hadn't even watched the whole season. I'm like, I feel like this dude loves Jesus. Like I can just sense, how sometimes you can just sense the Holy Spirit in people. It's like, I feel like this guy loves Jesus. You didn't say anything overtly like Christian or like, over the top cheesy stuff. I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like this guy loves Jesus. So you win and she's all happy. And I'm like, that's cool. This seems like a really nice guy. And so I'm like, look him up online. So we see online and like, okay, he's a pastor. I'm like, I knew it. I knew I could tell he was a Christian. And then I was like, let's message the guy. So literally 2 days ago is the first time I like watched the show. But anyway, that was a really long answer to say, I think because there's like a resurgence and it's probably on, I don't know, what is it on Netflix or Disney or whatever?
I
Like
have no idea.
it's
To
popping
be
back up.
I should probably know,
Yeah.
but I
But
don't.
you have other things going on, man, in your life that are much bigger right now. One thing you did say that stuck out to me, I thought this was really powerful at the end of when you won, you said you kept thinking about your wife and how she didn't have a tap out button. And I thought that was a really powerful line. And then even now hearing your story of where you're at with your family and all the things that you're dealing with your family, I feel like that line is even more powerful. There is no tap out button. And, like, I don't know, does that resonate or, like, have you thought through that at all and you're in the midst of your suffering and just, like, how are you viewing that? I know that's not really a clear question, but is there any tie there and just, like, knowing that, like, in the show, obviously, you can click a button and you can tap out, but right now you were in the middle of your suffering and you even said, "I wish I could just flip a switch and this would be all gone," but you know that that's not happening this side of heaven. So how are you processing all that mentally?
Yeah, I think just, um, if we can try to bridge the 2, is that there's always purpose in suffering.
Mm,
Like, God doesn't leave any suffering empty. Like, I really truly believe that every moment of suffering that I experience is something where the Lord is intentionally drawing me closer to himself
mm,
or sanctifying me in some way.
mm,
And so to live with that peace is better than to just not suffer at all.
mm,
Um, Suffering is really, a strange, uninvited gift.
mm,
Um, and so to experience that and to be able to articulate that, um, is probably the biggest, um, is probably the biggest blessing of my life at the same time as it is the biggest hardship, um, of my life. Um,
it's like Matthew 5, like, "Blessed are those who mourn," it's like, why would that be a blessing? Well, for
yeah.
those who are mourning, why is that a blessing? It's like it's that kingdom conundrum where it's like I'm experiencing Jesus and the presence of the Holy Spirit deeper than I would ever experience if I wasn't suffering.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want this, and yet somehow I'm finding levels of depth with the Lord that I know I would never actually experience if the suffering wasn't here. I feel like that's what you're saying, but I don't wanna put words in your mouth.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And um, I welcome I welcome the words being put into my mouth because it's true. And the Beatitudes are super helpful. Um, like you brought up, they're very very helpful. Yeah, I feel like recognizing weakness and leaning into it rather than away from it. It's kind of like Paul in Second Corinthians, like acknowledging that we are wasting away, but that Christ is not. Like he's actually building us up. Um, is such a gift because I know people who have far less suffering. I know people. First of all, I know people who are suffering far more than I am at this present moment,
Mm,
and I don't want to not um, include that. But there's a lot of people who are suffering far less, who are in some level of just they're just unsatisfied with life. They're confused about um, where they're headed. They feel purposeless. Um, they are far from the Lord, and I would just I would just I would just much rather suffer than be totally just live a life where I feel comfortable and without purpose. Um, and so
that's an incredible statement, dude. I was gonna ask you, like, what would you say? Because I think a lot of guys feel that. They feel purposeless and maybe they're just kinda bored in life and they're not really suffering. Like, what would you say to that guy? What you just said is gonna feel like that doesn't even make sense. Like, I know biblically it makes sense, but it just doesn't you said, "I would rather suffer than to have that." That just feels insane.
yeah, I and that's my biggest struggle is what do you say to that guy? Because I like when you say what do you say to that guy, there's not like a hypothetical guy in mind. It's like actual men who I've sat across from who have
Yeah.
actually, being a pastor who've actually um said those things to me. And this is gonna be an off like I don't know if this is a comment you're expecting, but my comment is you have to draw closer to Christ and to the gospel, and you have to do that as part of a local church.
Mhm.
Like that's all I say. Because when men say that to me, I say I need to spend a lot of time with you.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
there's not there's I don't have a one liner that's gonna be powerful enough to draw that man through. I'm not a good enough wordsmith to make that happen, but I can be close to people and I can spend a lot of time with them
Mhm.
and we can get closer relationally and I can show them what it looks like to find joy in the gospel.
Mm.
And so I think if people are listening to this and maybe they're a solo Christian, or if they're trying to walk through life, maybe they're streaming church or something like that. Man, the body of Christ through his local church is such a gift. Um, and it's not without its challenges, obviously. It's not without hurt at times, but to join in the work of Jesus through his church, there's nothing more empowering or exciting than to do that. Like
Amen.
if you don't feel purpose in your own life, why don't you just say, "Hey, maybe that's okay. Maybe I can just focus on Christ and his purpose
Mm,
in this world."
mm. I I have 3 thoughts that came to my mind as you were saying that, so I'm just
I love
gonna
that.
yeah, I'm gonna rattle them off, and you tell me, what one we can tackle here. First, this is more just kind of a thought, which was, when I was at when I recently hit one of the lowest, if not the lowest moment of my life, darkest season for sure, chapter of my life, this last year, I called an old mentor, and he said, this is probably, he said, I don't know how you're going to take what I'm about to say, but like, I've been praying this for you for a long time. Basically, I've been praying that you would hit bottom for a long time.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I hate you and I love you, like, and, but he was essentially like, in his wisdom, life experience, he's like, I knew you needed to really hit bottom to experience Jesus in this way. And as much as I didn't want you to feel pain and to go through hardship, like I kind of did, because I really wanted you to experience this level of relationship with Jesus that you wouldn't otherwise. And so I think that was just more of a thought as we were talking about suffering and these, and you saying, I would rather be suffering and find Jesus in these ways than to feel kind of a life of apathy. So you can give any thoughts to that if you have. But 2 other thoughts I had were, 1, I think you watch a guy like you in reality show called Alone, and thought could be the conclusion could be, well, this guy's just really introverted, and he just like he would prefer to be alone in the woods by himself than to be around people. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, especially like with the answer that you just gave about being in community and being around other people.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, like, are you naturally introverted, or would you rather be alone in the woods by yourself, or would you naturally be with other people? And then with everything that you have going on in your world right now, um, I think most people would say it's totally justifiable for you, Sam, to like push everyone aside and just focus all your time and energy on your family. And so I find it interesting that you said, what I would say to that guy across the table is, come spend more time with me. And so, how are you balancing that where it's like, just, I want to give every ounce of my energy and focus to my family, and nobody would fault you for that, while also saying, actually, I want to spend time in community. So I gave you 3 like really random thoughts there. Did that prick any thoughts for you? Take any one of them you want.
Yeah, let's do all of them. So
Okay.
the first one is like, so you're talking about, you have a mentor who was waiting for you to hit rock bottom. Um, I think it's really important to have that person there to begin with. We it's talking to community about community again. Like we need to have people like that in our lives, spiritual mothers and fathers who will speak truth to us when we're speaking lies to ourselves.
Definitely.
Um, and so I think it was last year, might have been 2 years ago, but I actually went to a man who, when I went through my church planter assessment through the Send Network, there was a man in Chicago who assessed family health.
Mm.
Um, and he's just a really good dude who right now he pastors a really small church on the Iowa-Illinois border. And he was just like, yeah, I'll meet with you, I'll Zoom with you every 2 weeks or every month. And so I started doing that 2 years ago or so. And it's funny. He said on the first meeting, he's like, so what happened? Like what happened to you that you had to reach out to me? And I said, nothing happened, but something's going to happen.
Mm.
And so I'm starting this relationship with you now
Mm.
because you were so open and inviting about it at my assessment, and I just knowing everything that is happening in my life, I know something is coming. Like, I know I'm gonna hit like, I don't wanna hit rock bottom, but I know I'm gonna go through some kind of turbulence that I can't weather all on my own, and, like, uh, I'm putting you in place so that you have all the background information you need to
Mm.
help when that happens.
Wow.
And so that's been a really healthy relationship, to pour into.
I think the way that you summarize that by saying we need people to speak truth to us when we are believing lies is like the most beautiful way to like we talk about that on this podcast all the time. Literally talked about it in last week's episode. There's a Dietrich Bonhoeffer quote that says something to the effect of I'm gonna butcher it, but essentially the Christ in you is weaker or quieter than the Christ of your
Mm,
brother.
yeah,
And
yeah.
as we try to kind of talk ourselves out of things, it's not as helpful as having a brother kind of see things objectively and to be able to speak truth into the lies that we're believing. I love the way you said that. All right, that was
Exactly.
number 1. Hit
Yeah.
number 2, the introvert and the, time with family versus time with community.
Yeah, and I would just as a little tail end of that, I would add how unhealthy it is to have someone like that close to you who only wants to coddle you,
Mm,
like, who's only ever gonna agree with you
yeah,
in your pain and in your suffering and tell you that you're right.
yeah.
"I feel this, I feel this, I feel this." Like, you need someone who's gonna tell you, "That's wrong." Not that's right, just to make you feel like you're somehow okay with that or better. Coddling is almost never kindness, is what we tell people. Um, so
That's why ChatGPT therapy is not as helpful. 'Cause I don't like there's, like, a big trend right now where people getting therapy through AI is I don't know if you're like you probably I'm guessing you this is not a world that you spend a lot of time.
no, I love it actually.
Okay, okay,
Uh,
yeah, right, we could talk but the thing about, AI is they're always gonna coddle. They're always gonna come back with, "Yes, you're right. Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, yeah, you're right." And sometimes this is why we need real human relationships where somebody's gonna say, "Dude, I love you so much, and that's not right, what you're thinking. Like, you are believing a lie." Um, so yeah, anyway, I didn't mean to go on an AI track.
no, I actually like that because what you got to do if you're AI therapy sessioning, whatever it's called, is say from a biblical perspective, what's the
Yeah,
truth in this? And they might be wrong, but it's funny either way.
yeah,
This to
yeah.
know a robot's telling you this stuff. So
Yeah, alright, man. Are you naturally introverted? Is that your bent?
I've always liked spending a little bit of time alone, but I'm definitely an extrovert. I
It's
I
just cool
love
hearing a guy who won alone say,
yeah.
I like spending a little bit of time alone." Okay, yeah.
I like
Or
spending a little bit of time alone, but I'm
yeah,
I'm mostly an extrovert. I get energy from being around people.
okay.
It depending on the people,
Yeah.
um, but I like to think that um, I almost think that introvert and extrovert is just too simple
Mm,
to wrap our heads around. Like when I look at it, I want to be extroverted where Jesus was extroverted, and I want to be introverted where he was introverted.
what do you mean?
Like like I want to spend time with people. Like I want to have this life where I have relationships where we're living life together and encouraging one another and calling us out on our sins. Like I want to have that type of relational closeness to people. To just have that proximity in leadership, but at the same time, um, I wanna acknowledge that I need time alone.
Mhm,
Like, I need time where I need to go up on the mountain with the Father and be uninterrupted,
mhm.
and then I can go back down to the crowds and do whatever the Lord has for me there.
Yeah.
But
Do you have that? Do you have, like, intentional time where you're just by yourself?
no, that's my biggest failure right now
Really?
is I just haven't made time to do that, because there's always something to do. And there's always that opportunity to be sacrificial and make sure someone else can do that.
Yeah,
And so that's probably my biggest, um, like the goal that I have yet to really achieve
yeah.
is to have a healthy pattern of alone time.
I was talking to a, group of young adults last night at our church, and we were talking about how important it is to have this alone time where you can hear from the Lord. Like a lot of times we don't even it's impossible for us to get healthy because we just never sit in silence.
Yeah.
We're just constantly distracted and numbing out. And I like we're all guilty of that.
Yeah.
I did want to pick your brain when you are just in your own thoughts for months.
Cool.
Did like what do you start to talk to me? What happens? You know, like mentally, are you do stuff come up that you didn't expect to come up? Um, I would imagine there's a lot of like psychological stuff that happens when you're just in your thoughts for if I'm by myself for like 30 minutes, stuff starts popping up. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I can't imagine weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of that.
Yeah. I think I started to focus on prayer um, as just an escape. It's
Mm,
like to escape my own head because my own head was not always the best place to be. I have a really strong, and I think this developed during the show, but I have like a really strong inner voice
mm,
that I would like to turn off more often.
mm,
But
mm.
I still struggle with that. Um, but yeah, it is difficult. There's a song that I had stuck in my head on the first season. I think it was 37 days before I finally kicked it. Um, and that was torturous, you know?
Yeah, especially depending on the song. Can you tell us what the song was?
What's that? Yeah, so it's um, what's so we were thinking this is a long time ago, right? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
over 10 years ago. What's the song about the monster inside of my head with the it's like Eminem featured. He has like a rap thing that he does
I
in
think
it.
it's called Monster.
Monster, yeah.
Is that true?
That monster
Or
stuck in my head for 37 days.
I'm looking it up right now. I don't have with it. I think it's called yeah, the Monster. Is it by with Rihanna?
Yeah. Yep, yep.
Yeah, nothing to take us back to the gospel with a little bit of Rihanna references.
That's right.
What did you mean by you have a really strong inner voice? What'd you say inner voice? Or how did you say that? You have like a you noticed that you have a really strong. What did you mean by that?
I think I might have a higher tendency to daydream than the average guy
Mm,
because I'll just be um when you're on alone, you're constantly thinking through things, but there's no one to talk to, so it's just in your head. And
mhm,
so anytime I'm sitting down, I'm observing or looking around and there's thoughts going through my head and I'm just very intensely thinking about things. Um, but it often takes me away from being like present
yeah,
and maybe what I should be focused on or what's more healthy to be focused on.
yeah.
Um,
Do you think there
I
could be some, like, detachment or even just, like, your brain is trying to find, escape because if you stay in the present, it's too painful?
Yeah, there's a lot of that, I think. I actually saw a psychologist after Alone for a short period of time. Um, it was a funniest job in the world, a reality show contestant, specialized psychologist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Super niche, yeah.
some very, very niche. And she identified it as a form of grief in some way and how I was trying to like comfort myself through this inner voice that I had in the wilderness, but I really
Mhm.
have a life that I just need to return to.
Yeah.
Um, and so the inner voice thing has not been helpful. It's probably the one negative thing that came out of Alone in a
Mm.
sea of positives. Um,
You didn't
yeah.
notice that you had that inner voice as much until you got on Alone? Is that what you're saying? Like, or you feel like it developed on Alone?
I feel like it developed on
Oh, wow.
Alone to an unhealthy level.
Wow. Interesting.
So
Interesting. That's really fascinating. I always wonder why people don't talk to the camera more, like, as if it were like, personify the camera.
like a Wilson type.
Yeah, Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's probably because we don't like the camera.
Uh,
The camera on alone is kind of the enemy.
mm,
So, because it's you just wanna be there by yourself, and you wanna be in the wilderness, and you have this camera, and the camera is your job.
right.
You know, the camera doesn't signify, the beauty of being out in God's creation. It signifies that cord holding you back to a world of,
Oh,
like, New York
interesting.
skyscrapers and suits and stuff.
Interesting.
That's
That's really
that's what it was like for me, you know?
yeah, that's really fascinating. How often do they come and change the batteries?
So there was never a real pattern when I was on.
Really?
But I would say between my last check it was day 45, and then they got me on day 60.
Wow.
So about 2 weeks.
Dang. So you must have a ton of batteries in
Yeah, you have like 100 batteries.
Okay. So you're just
So
stocked up. Yeah.
yeah. Oh
What
yeah,
hap
you have everything.
what happens if there's an emergency? Like, what happens if you just trip, like, set yourself on one of your own traps? Like, or do
Yeah.
like, what do you do
So
then?
tons of safeguards, and they keep getting better every single year.
Okay.
So, um, season one, there was basically nothing. So
I feel like season 1 was, like, guys like me, like, that went to Walmart and got some, gear from the clearance
yeah,
aisle and, like, try to stay alone.
it's why it's one of my favorite seasons because it's just very raw. Like it's
Yeah.
if you're wondering how you would do on Alone, you could probably watch season one,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
and you're not the hero. Like that's what I always kind of relate to. But um uh oh, so for safety, they have a number of redundancies built into the system.
Mm,
So we have a satellite phone if you just need to do a call for some reason, which is very rare. I think I used it once, and it was just a logistics thing.
mm,
Um, and then they have a yellow brick, which is a GPS that you're required to carry on your person at all times. And if it senses that you fell hard,
mm.
or if something happens where maybe it dies or you seem to have wandered outside of your designated area, it beeps you, and the crew knows exactly where you are.
Oh, wow.
Um, and you get in big trouble if you leave that at your site and go off. I've heard stories of that causing some problems for people, but you also have to twice a day use that little yellow brick device, and you have to text in it just okay.
Got it. I would
I would
for
always
something like that, yeah.
well, there's generic text messages. I would always choose all okay, which
Oh, okay.
was fun to do when you're alone. All of us here together are fine.
Yeah. All of my inner voices and
Yeah.
personalities, yeah.
But the evening check was 4 p.m. And so if you got mauled by a grizzly bear between 4 p.m. and 10 a.m., like
Damn.
you're no, no.
Jeez. While we're on the shallow stuff, uh, are you still doing any outdoor I know you at one point, like, wasn't your job doing outdoor survival stuff and training and all that stuff? Are you still doing any of that stuff?
So I don't do any of that at the moment. It's not that I won't ever, but I'm just kind of all in on the ministry
Yeah.
church planting thing right now. It just kind of consumes all of my work hours. Um, and it has been kind of a blessing though to make outdoor stuff into a hobby again and not a
Mm.
job.
Yeah.
you know? So now when I do things in the outdoors, like I'm planning to go hunting with a couple of friends from church, like upcoming, I'm gonna see that as just a joy
Yeah.
rather than this is my work. I'm with clients.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be training people and keeping them entertained.
Yeah. I think we need to do a dad tired outdoor survival find Jesus retreat
That'd
kind
be
of
awesome.
something like
Yeah.
that. And hopefully that would be life giving. I think we could plan something like that. Would be super fun. All right. Lastly, dude, I've taken so much of your time in. Time with family versus community. I was talking about that a few
Yeah.
minutes ago. Like just how do you again? And nobody would fault you if you said, "I'm just gonna hunker down and spend all my time with my family." How are you processing that?
So I spend a lot of time with my family. Like that's no question, right? I'm never the minute they got diagnosed, I completely oriented my life and my goals and everything it, within the buffer time of the couple of years after these diagnoses to I'm going to spend as much time with my family as possible, and I'm going to cut all of these strings that were attached to me. Like I'm going to go off and teach survival for a week over here. I don't do that at all anymore. I just totally dropped it.
Yeah.
But what that has done is it's kept me at home, and it's forced me to make home my home. Like, home is my fun, my joy, my local community around me. Those are my friends, rather than having all of my friends be in different states and across the country.
Mm,
Um, like, my friends are the people at my church. Like, tonight we're gonna have um, families from my church over here, and we're gonna just have a great time praying for each other and going through a Bible study. And
mm.
that's been the biggest change for me. Is family is the priority. That's my first ministry, to begin with, and that's a whole other podcast in itself. Like, how does parenting change when there's not, and your kid becomes an adult someday, coming up in the future.
Right.
Um, but just drawing everything closer into a tight knit community where I am with my kids.
That was gonna be my last question to you. So, and you said maybe we need a whole nother podcast, but,
No, no, no.
uh,
It was 2 minutes. Yeah.
I was gonna ask you, how do you, because you mentioned that at the beginning, like, it reframed everything you were thinking as a dad. You
Mhm.
just kinda flipped it upside down. And we can try to find a time if this needs more time to unpack that, but I would be curious to just pick your brain on, like, how did it change your here and now, your today parenting based on the diagnosis of your children?
Yeah, it would be really good to pursue that topic as like a planned out, maybe not spur of the moment
Okay.
type thing. But my like 2 minute answer, um, it comes down to, like, who are my children, and who am I, and who is God,
Mm,
and how do these relationships work together? Like,
mm,
what is God's intention with my life and with my children's lives, and why did He give them to me?
mm,
Um, because when my kids got diagnosed, I have to always remember this. Um, that did not take God by surprise. He wasn't the one pacing around a hotel hallway wondering what was going to happen. And so for me, it has always come down to, I am here to steward my children and to show them God's love
mm,
through how I am their father.
mm,
I'm not called to determine what their life is going to look like, and I really don't have any control over that. I think sometimes we find kids who maybe, or fathers who maybe don't have kids who have some kind of uh, diagnosis of a disease that changes everything, um, find some kind of hidden comfort in being able to guide their child's life in a way that is pleasing to them and is good. But that's always a comfort that it doesn't last, because we don't really have control over any of those things. And so to focus on, I am a child of God. He's given me these children to steward for their time on earth. I never had any control over what that timeline is or the events that are going to transpire during that time. I'm just called to be faithful where He's placed me right now.
mm. Dude, this has been, and I'm not saying this lightly. This has been one of the most refreshing conversations I've had in a really, really long time. It has filled my cup, and not at all where I thought we were going to go today in our conversation. And I just am really, really, really encouraged and blessed by it. So, dude, thank you so much for so last minute squeezing in some time to hang out and talk with me today.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, Jared. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, dude, I'll look forward to staying in touch, man. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. See you, man.